testimonial about the impact of coaching in my life. I was raised in a medical family and eventually gravitated to work in healthcare and spent a number of years kind of working my way up the ladder in management positions and eventually got the opportunity to be a hospital CEO. And during the first part of my tenure, I tried coaching. Somebody convinced me to try it, and eventually I became a strong believer in it. And that was based on the impact it had on me personally, on my team, and my organization. Eventually, I shared the coaching resources with every member of my management team, and I believe it had a significant impact. I see some people on the line today that look very familiar from that management team. Um, Later on, I decided on executive coaching and team coaching as an encore career, and consequently, I got certification about 6 years ago. And since then, I've been really inspired by my clients and my colleagues, including all of today's panelists. So, in preparation for today's session, I've been successful in recruiting three highly accomplished coaches to help me achieve the learning objective for today, which is to illustrate the power and potential of using coaching and related modalities to inspire your teams. These can be teams in which you participate as a member or that you lead or both. Our panelists will each in turn share with you a sampling of their methods and experiences working with clients to give you a flavor of how coaching used in conjunction with other developmental practices can have a powerful impact on your team and in turn on your organization. Topics they'll cover will include such things as how trust becomes a foundational element for team success, or how self-awareness can enable a shift from drama to empowerment, or how observing and gathering data about team dynamics can prove to be a powerful tool to create awareness and meaningful change. So our links to our panelists' bios are available in the event, or have been made available in the event invite. And we're also providing contact information in the chat for them. I highly recommend you review this information because all three have very impressive credentials and experience. All three are on faculty at either Harvard Business Exec or Georgetown University, just as an example. Today's agenda includes, beyond this introduction, a centering exercise, a brief poll, and 3 testimonials from our coaches. Whatever time is left, we'll use for Q&A. And we have the capacity to respond to questions posed on chat. And sorry, we have to go on mute, but there's so many people here. We only have an hour. We'll do our best to answer as many of the chat questions as we can. And if necessary, if we have to refer answers until after the session, I'll commit that everyone who asks the question will get an answer from one of us. If you'd like to pose your question to any individual, feel free to do that, because everyone here is able and willing to get back to you if they need to after the session. Just a quick intro to the panel. The first panelist is Amy Tormey. Amy, could you, yes, there you are. Amy is a professionally certified coach with over 20 years experience, and she's a founding partner of Charleston Consulting Group. And this is a business consulting and executive coaching firm that offers advisory services, one-on-one executive coaching, organizational development consulting, team facilitation, and training. Petra Platzer is our second panelist. Hi, Petra. She's a PhD and professionally certified coach with over 25 years experience. She serves as CEO and founding partner of SixSeed Partners, a consulting firm providing integrated solutions to hospitals and healthcare organizations. And they focus on executive and team coaching, organizational development, and systems thinking to support healthcare leaders. Alexander Caillet, now I pronounced that right, Alexander, right? He's a professional coach as well with over 25 years experience, and he's co-founder and CEO of Corentus, a consulting, coaching, and professional development firm, which is dedicated to development and transformation of coaches, teams, and organizations, both nationally and internationally. So it's great to have these three panelists with us. Now, some thoughts about team coaching. First of all, what's a team? A team is a small group of people collaborating together who hold each other mutually accountable to achieve a common purpose. What's team coaching? Team coaching is a process, and this may surprise some of you. Team coaching is a process of observing the team in action, occasionally pausing to share insights about team dynamics and posing questions that can help them learn about themselves and motivate them to make changes in their behavior patterns. Coaching is often coupled with other modalities that are familiar to you, like facilitation, which is somewhat like team coaching, although the facilitator usually temporarily takes up a leadership role and provides direction and guidance. Training, which involves learning and practicing skills. Team building, which involves strengthening team spirit and cohesion. And consulting, which involves expert opinions and advice. In team coaching, one size really never fits all. Each team has its own personality, culture, and vision and goals. Once we have a better idea of these things, the coach consultant can customize an approach to result in developing new patterns of behavior, which lead to sustainable long-term results in team cohesion, team effectiveness, and team performance. So all the professional coaches in front of you today have extensive experience with these developmental practices, all of them, and are prepared to share with you some of their good work in this field. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Alexander and ask him to do a brief centering exercise for us. Alexander?
Thank you, Peter. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. We wanted to kick us off by giving us an opportunity to get centered in presence. It's something that we do as coaches, we work on with teams. So if you would all indulge us just for a few minutes and just find a comfortable seating position. I'm just gonna just engage a little bit of breathing, and that'll be it. It'll be nice and easy. So would everybody just please, in that comfortable seating position, just take a deep breath. Just take one long, deep breath. Inhale and exhale. And if you're so inclined, you can close your eyes, you can keep them open. We would ask you to just engage your breathing in a slower, more rhythmic fashion. Just give yourself about 20, 30 seconds to just breathe in and out in a more rhythmic manner, in a bit of a slower motion and a little bit deeper. If thoughts come out or come up, just let them be transient. Focus on your breath. Feel the shift that occurs through conscious breathing. And I think, Peter, with that, we're good. Thank you for indulging us.
Thank you, Alexander. This is Amy, who will help us with a poll, some poll questions. Amy, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm thrilled to be here. So we're going to, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and I'm thrilled to get your voices in the room right now. So we're going to explore trust in teams this afternoon, which I believe is at the heart of high-functioning, successful groups. So we have 3 questions. The first 2 are yes or no. Mark, can you put that first question in the poll? So the first question is, have you ever been part of a team that you would describe as very effective or good? This is yes or no. Okay, so we have mostly yeses. Yep. We don't have any no's yet, I don't think. Mostly yeses, 100% yeses. Great, fabulous. Love it. So let's go to the second question, I guess. So the second question, the opposite. Have you ever been part of a team that you would describe as dysfunctional or bad? Are we getting results on the second question? Have you ever been part of a team that you would describe as dysfunctional or bad?
The poll should be available. I'm not sure I'm seeing anybody answer it.
It didn't pop
Poll didn't
up.
pop up.
Yeah, no, we can't see
Thank
it.
you, Heather. Okay, you saw the first, did everyone see the first question? The first poll question?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
All right.
So we're going to go for the second question now. The second question is, have you ever been part of a team that you would describe as dysfunctional or bad? So, you can just put your answers in the chat. You could do, thumbs up, thumbs down. We can work around this.
The first poll question is showing up again.
Okay.
Uh,
So
Can you
how about
scroll down?
everybody?
Sorry, can you scroll down? I can see it as a scroll down thing, but is it only one question? No, okay.
So why
Sorry.
doesn't, we can just pivot here and folks can just put their answer in the chat to the question of, have you ever been part of a team that you would describe as dysfunctional? So I do see some yeses. Okay. Great. Great. A lot of yeses. Okay, good. This is excellent. So third question and final question, and I'll know you're answering this because this is a scaled question. It's not a yes or no. It's on a scale of 1 to 10. How well does the team you're currently on thrive and maintain high productivity and high vitality? What is your number between 1 and 10 for the current team you're on? I'd love to know that. On a scale of 1 to 10, I see a 4, a 6, a 4, a 6, a 9, an 8, a 6. Okay, so we're good. This is good. This is excellent. An 8, great. All right, well, thank you for that. So I'm going to kind of jump in. So I love that some of you experience what you'd call good team dynamics, right? In those teams, those good team dynamics, we see ideas flowing, collaboration on those teams comes easily. Office politics are probably non-existent. There's a lot of camaraderie where folks can admit mistakes and they feel safe to do so. And we assume the best intentions of one another on those teams, right? Meetings are efficient, productive, action items are clear, and the environment fosters creativity, innovation, the feeling that we can reach further, right? On the flip side, I also appreciate the honesty from those who've experienced dysfunctional teams, right? Those behaviors where team members are hesitant to speak up or give feedback. There's a lack of collaboration. Weaknesses or mistakes are often concealed, leading to mistrust. Colleagues, we quickly jump to conclusions where we don't we don't assume the best in others, right? And in reality, many of us have experienced a mix of both, right? Trusting and guarded behaviors in teams. And as with any relationships, teams need thoughtful, intentional care to thrive and remain successful. So right now, I want to share a real life case study that highlights the power of team coaching and how trust can be the key in transforming a team's dynamic. So I was brought into a dynamic organization with talented, passionate individuals, all experts in their field. And despite this, the team was struggling. The CEO sensed something was wrong and brought me in to try to uncover the issues. I interviewed every individual on the executive team, and from those interviews, a clear theme emerged. The team felt very micromanaged by the CEO. And this led to a culture of fear and distrust, where the team members were reluctant to make decisions or speak honestly in meetings. The atmosphere was tense. Team members weren't collaborating, and they certainly weren't assuming the best in one another. So to address this, I introduced a tool called Critical Friends during the next executive meeting. The CEO presented a challenge to the team, and then following the framework of Critical Friends, I had her step back and turn her back to the team. They couldn't see her, that there was no sharing of body language. She stepped back, turned her back to the team, and listened. She listened in silence while her team worked together to find the solution. And the key part here is the CEO had to be vulnerable in this moment. By stepping back and allowing her team to take the reins, she was putting herself in a position of trust. This wasn't easy. She had to overcome that urge to want to, for her instinct to want to control the process at hand. But by showing vulnerability and taking the risk, she opened the door for her team to take a risk as well. It created a space for them to share their ideas freely without fear of being judged. And at the end of the session, the CEO witnessed something remarkable. Her team, left to their own devices, solved the problem with creativity, their deep domain knowledge, and effective collaboration without needing her to intervene. So this exercise was transformative. The CEO's willingness to be vulnerable inspired her team to step up, share ideas, and collaborate in new ways. She realized her team had the capability to solve complex issues on their own, and the team members saw the power of working together, of collaboration. Respect grew. It grew within the relationships the CEO had with each team member and also amongst the team members. But it didn't happen overnight. It took work, it took commitment from everyone on the team. Each member had to actively participate, trust the process, and be open to change. The Critical Friends exercise, it was the first step. It allowed me to further explore with the team and help the team shape norms that they would use moving forward as they grew to become more successful. The CEO's vulnerability and the team's willingness to engage, that sparked the transformation, but the key was sustaining that progress over time. I continued to meet with the team. We had ongoing coaching sessions. We had structured interactions. They developed and committed to a set of behaviors of a trusting team. They brought their voices to the table. They admitted mistakes easily. They assumed the best in others. They offered and accepted apologies easily. They avoided office politics, and they learned to really leverage what they each brought to the table. So the team now operates much more effectively. They approach every new challenge with a growth mindset, with openness and shared leadership. So I hope you can see from this quick case study the results of team coaching and how it can be transformative. I have a few slides just to further capture and solidify all of this. So Mark, if you want to bring those up, let's see. So, okay, so you can go to the next slide. So this is just the business case for trust. So it's not just a feel good, want to do good. Organizations that prioritize and cultivate trust within their teams are better positioned to achieve their strategic objectives, adapt to change, and maintain a competitive edge in the marketplace. You can bring all these up, Mark, if you don't mind. These are all the behaviors that we discussed. And the bottom line is, we can keep going. Let's see. Enhance collaboration, increase productivity, higher employee engagement, improved innovation, creativity, greater resilience during challenging times, better client stakeholder relationships. You can bring, I think there's another one. Yep, cost efficiency, and it all leads to the ROI of the organization, which is the last you'll see. One more. Yep, there we go. A direct ROI impact in the organization. So there's a business case, there's a dollars and cents reason to make sure we have trust on our teams. It moves the organization forward. We can go to the last slide, the next slide. So I use a lot of different frameworks when I work with teams. And this is just one of them by Patrick Lencioni. Trust is the foundational element for team success. So trust is the cornerstone. It's the cornerstone of teamwork. It embraces every member. Everyone needs to be vulnerable to foster that openness and honesty so that we can have conflict. And teams need conflict and candid debate. And that's driven by trust and free expression so that we can have commitment. You can press the next, there we go. Commitment emerges, and so we can have debate, so we can all reach we can make a decision for one voice for the whole team, so we can have accountability, 100% buy-in from everyone on the team with an attention to results. And it's not individual results, but it's the team result that we're measuring. Everyone has a share in the outcome where we want to get to. So this is my spiel. This is me. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. I hope this has been thought-provoking and has sparked some curiosity on your end about trust and teams and the power of team coaching. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amy.
Welcome.
Next, I'd like to turn to Petra.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Peter and Mark. If you wouldn't mind bringing the slides back up, that would be very helpful. And while Mark's doing that, as Peter said in the introduction, at SixSeed Partners, we work primarily with healthcare clients because that's all of our backgrounds. And that means we understand the unique ethos of leading clinicians and administrators and caregivers. So as you can see in the slide here, even when we begin with the more traditional individual leader coaching, we see the most benefits to that leader and the system overall when we can integrate team development alongside. So the foundational dimension of work to create sustainable change, and Amy was just talking about sustainability. So that dimension is really the C dimension that you can see in the slide image. And that focuses on thinking about how we think, interact, and take action. And that's the area that most teams spend the least amount of time. So that's why those of us on this panel are here to highlight some tools that we use to help teams spend time here while doing the work of the work. Next slide, please. So practically speaking, what working on the C dimension means is that we're looking at our internal operating system. And that's depicted by this model by David Emerald. And it says that where we put our focus, our attention, evokes our inner state, our feelings, and those drive our behaviors and our actions, which lead to our results. So this is termed the FISB model, not Frisbee, but FISB. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so we can orient our focus in two main directions, as you can see here. And you can think of this as putting on, which glasses am I putting on? And for those of us who might need readers and distance, that's a little metaphor you can keep in your mind. So when we put our attention and our focus on the problem, on what we don't want, on the thing that we are trying to avoid from happening, that drives an inner state of some version of anxiety and fear. And that then has us reacting to the problem at hand. Okay, so you can view that as the problem orientation and problem reacting. The other set of glasses and the other direction of attention is around the results that we want to achieve. So what we want. And here, that orientation and that focus and attention, that evokes an inner state of some version of what you care about, some passion, some joy. And that then drives incremental steps towards that result that you're trying to accomplish. So these two orientations, the reason that really has impact, and having this awareness of which glasses we put on is what you see now on the slide about the difference in results from these two orientations. So when orienting towards the problem and what we don't want, the results really, our actions and behaviors, ourselves and our teams, are perpetual fire drills. And they really have this episodic, we think we've solved the problem and then somehow it's here again in some different version. And so over time that leads to burnout. So it's this repetitive on, off, on, off. And so this is actually termed the drama triangle, and you'll see why in a moment. So these are short-term episodic results. In contrast, the outcome orientation, the results here are that we are taking these incremental steps towards the outcome all the time. So the cycle keeps going. So over time, you are creating sustainable change and results that it might not be linear, but you're always moving towards it. So this is really considered problem solving towards the outcome. And here, this is empowerment. All right. Next slide, please. So those two orientations, whichever glasses you put on, one, have an impact on the results that we have individually or as a team. Two, they also, it's important to know this because we also have a predictable characteristic set of characters and roles that we take on when we have these different glasses on, because it's the way we're seeing the world and our internal operating system. So from that problem orientation, I keep wanting to move my mouse to click on the circle, but from that problem orientation, it's really rooted in this mindset of not having power, of not having the ability to create, and that things are happening to us. So powerless, and having this mindset, it's rooted in a victimhood of there's nothing I can do. The other orientation, the outcome orientation, is also called a creator orientation because it's rooted in this mindset of there is something we can choose. There is something I can create, no matter what the context. And each of these then has, again, predictable roles that we can take on inside in our own internal chatter as well as with others. Okay, so now for the case study. Next slide, please. When a director of APPs, advanced practice practitioners from a neonatal division at a community-based hospital came to us, she was looking for team building. And when she explained what the concerns were that you can see here, that there were some challenging interactions, some of the morale was decreasing, and actually even when there was rounding now with parents, because it's a neonatal division, they were starting to see some impact on those dynamics with the patient care. Some of the APPs were not feeling that they were able to speak into the team in providing care and really practice to the level that they have in their license. So all of that context, it was clear that the team's effectiveness was decreasing and drama was really starting to show up. The nurse manager and medical director were getting a lot more chatter and complaints coming. And so that's why they were looking for team building. And in this conversation, then what we really said was, okay, even how we design this team intervention, as Amy pointed out, creating any behavior change or team dynamic effectiveness changes takes time. So we developed a team development series named Increasing Awareness to Increase Team Effectiveness. Even naming something as an outcome can be the start. Because inside of healthcare, in patient care, we are trained and wired to fix the problem, to diagnose what's wrong. And so it really does take wiring to practice naming things as a what's the result. We introduced in the very first session, and this is shift work, often that can be a challenge. And so we just made it happen so that there were 2 episodes always occurring and swapping of who was present in which. And then over time, beyond this session, they did teamwork together based on what we brought into the session. So some of the impact and results. We shared these framework that you just were introduced to, but in a much deeper way. And the invitation to everyone was to start to understand their own internal operating system and how they were approaching situations themselves, and then the interaction between. So over time, what was named even after 2 sessions was that, I now have an understanding of how I am seeing and which glasses I'm putting on. By putting on a different set of glasses, actually, I was able to have a different conversation. And this was true inside of the team as well as even at home. It was a great example about a dishwasher and a family dynamic. So the framework and understanding, how do we operate? How are we perceiving and responding to situations influences how we then interact with others. So taking the time and normalizing that in a group setting where everybody is working on this makes it a safe place to really see that this is true for all of us. And then there's also the possibility to work individually with some people who are ready and willing to do a little bit more work. So that's a bit of the story here. Happy to answer questions, mindful of others on the panel. So I'm done for now. Thank you. Over to Alexander.
Thank you, Petra. Actually, if anyone has questions of Amy or Petra, just put it right in the chat. Okay, and the next up is Alexander. You're on mute.
Thank you, Peter. So what I'd like to do is to delve into a specific tool that we use in team coaching and to give you a sample of that tool as it was used with the team that we worked with. So at Corentus, we practice a form of team coaching whereby we engage with teams over a 3 to 6 month period of time. And we engage with them by working with them during their real work sessions. So we participate with them as they engage in their meetings and their work sessions. And we do observation of their ways of working, their group dynamics, and their behaviors as they're carrying out their day-to-day business as usual. And what it helps us do is to gather data in a specific way and feed that data back into the system so that they can become aware of the data we've observed. We feed it back in a neutral manner so that they can make meaning of it for themselves. And then they can take that data and they can make modifications to either strengthen strengths or, work against some of their challenges. So if you would share my slides. All right, that'd be great. So let's move forward. So there are a number of different types of data that we gather, and this is a rather busy slide. But on the far left, we can gather data that look at the team's outcomes they're producing, the patterns they engage in that produce the outcomes, and the norms that are underneath those patterns. We can engage in data in the center chart around communication flows, taking a look at who is speaking to whom and how many times they speak with each other. On the top right, we can look at specific behaviors that they're exhibiting. And we can do what we call the tick mark work of actually codifying those behaviors and feeding that back to them. And on the bottom, we can make assessments around what we're noticing is their overall emotional mood in the room. And what I like to do is focus on the top right chart, behavior chart, and give you an example of one that we used with the team. So if you advance the slide. Oh, okay. So the colors came out a little funky, but we'll be able to play with this. So one of the areas that we look at in team coaching is the notion of communication. So during the interview process that starts at the beginning of an engagement, we ask quite a few questions about the communication patterns on the team, what is working and what is not working. And we'll usually hear quite a bit about the team's levels of interrupting, or perhaps listening, or asking questions, inquiry, use of humor, what we call stacks, which are the number of times that statements are made that don't relate to what was just said. And we'll hear those in the interviews. We'll confirm that with the team. And what we'll do during a meeting is we'll actually quietly codify what we're observing during that particular meeting. And in this particular case, this is a team from a leadership team from a publishing company. What we did was, on the top line, you'll see a row called communication acts. So every time that Paul, Aiken, Marie, Byrne, Kareem, Reese, or Birgit made a statement or took a turn at speaking, we give them a tick mark. That is called taking a turn or making a communication or communication act. And then we qualify that statement as one of several things: an interruption, a stack, perhaps a statement that was made that was not quite relevant to the conversation at hand, a deviation or a tangent, if you will. If it was a question, we'll qualify it as a question. And if that question was answered, we will then qualify that answer, that question is being answered with a tick mark. We'll also log in perhaps humor statements that are made. And what's really interesting is when we total up the columns and we total up the rows, we get some interesting data. So in this particular instance, in a 45-minute period, there were 91 statements made, 29 of which were interruptions, 18 of which were stacks, 15 of which were questions, 7 of those questions were answered, and there were 8 humor statements made. That is our assessment. So one of the cautions that we pose in this particular way of codifying, it's all an assessment. It is on the team coach to make that assessment and to feed the data back to the team in a neutral manner. So in feeding the data back to the team, we keep it in an aggregated format. We keep it elevated, and we feed back data saying in the past 45 minutes, there were 91 statements. I assessed that there were around 29 statements of those that began with interruptions. What do you make of that? What is your interpretation of that? And so then we engage the client in a conversation around the communication behavior of interrupting, which really sparks a lot of insight. And interestingly enough, in this team, created a marked decrease in interruptions pretty much at the next work session. We also talked about stacking, the fact that in several conversations, statements were made that were perhaps not relevant to the statement that was previously made or to the conversation at hand. And that led to a very interesting conversation around tangents and deviations not sticking to completing a conversation. We also talked about the rate of inquiry. And at this point, we're at about 12% inquiry rate. Are you asking enough questions? Does this work for you? 7 of those questions were answered. What do you make of that? And this particular form of codifying behaviors really allows a team to engage in conversations with themselves, deliver in a neutral manner without judgment, and you can see marked change in behaviors fairly quickly. It's also a chance, if you look at Marie, the team leader, to have a private coaching conversation with her about her specific communication behaviors, which can be a powerful conversation to be had. Individuals may ask for their personal data. We send that via email, and we have follow-up conversations with those individuals that they can bring to their individual coaches. So just wanted to share this with you today. We'll stop on this screen. I know there's a lot here, but it's just to give you a sense of some of the work that we do as team coaches to make our work more quantifiable, relevant, practical, and impactful. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Alexander, too. Each of the panelists are bringing a different perspective, each of them based on a model, and each of them which have clearly had an impact on the clients that they've served, and that's intentional. That we didn't want to come all with the same approach today. We wanted to give you a flavor for some of the variety of how coaching is approached. And then we want to open it up for any questions you have at this time.
I'd be happy to facilitate that. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll call on you, and then just address it to the coach you're interested in answering that question. Are there any questions?
I'm also looking in the chat if anybody would like to put it there.
No questions. Are there any comments or responses or insights or reactions to what Petra, Amy, and I presented today? Those are welcome as well.
Sorry, this is Kevin here at the Manchester VA. Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise my hand on this thing.
Okay.
Hey, I guess I'm curious. We've done a lot of team training and coaching. Do you find the need for team training greater in organizations with a highly matrixed reporting environment versus maybe some of the traditional organization structure of everybody reporting to a single throughout a single unit? I'm just kind of curious if you've seen any trends one way or the other.
Petra or Amy, do you have an answer to that question?
Thank you, Kevin, first of all, for figuring out how to unmute. So your question around, is there more need in a matrix rather than a hierarchical structure? I think I would approach that as there might be a slightly different need, but each of them has a need for a lot of reasons. In a matrix scenario, the ability to, and which is true in healthcare, a lot of the projects, and you have interdisciplinary teams who are coming together focusing on CHR, HRO and these kind of things. So knowing exactly what Amy talked about, how do you establish trust quickly? How do you establish ways of working? How do you understand different styles and what a teamwork cycle is? What are the modes of operating in order to get to a result? So those don't exist naturally as they do in a hierarchical team that's been existing and is approaching something new. So that's my first pass. Happy to for other
Thank
thoughts.
you, Petra. Amy, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think so much depends on the dynamic within each organization that we're talking about. I think it's hard to sort of say it's always this way or that way with matrix or hierarchical. There's opportunity, there's always leadership gaps along the way that just have to be looked at on an individual case-by-case basis.
And
Yeah,
Kevin,
it really just depends on the people for the most part.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, Kevin, my experience with matrix teams is because individuals sit on several teams, and they cross over with their different reporting lines, whether it's solid or dotted. One of the pieces that we're finding is that the standard protocols need to be the same for teaming, Kevin. So if you have a team charter, that teams start their charters the same way and have the same boxes to fill in, if you will, in the beginning of team. If they're using particular meeting, decision-making, or accountability tools, that those tools are the same. So when the managers, the matrixed managers, move from their different teams, they step into teams where the experience and the ways of working are similar, and they're not trying to learn new ways of working or different tools going from team to team. So that's been, and working with one large nonprofit here in Boston, that was one of the things that really increased their efficiency and their effectiveness, is that standardization of protocols across teams.
I would agree with that, Alexander, and also add just language, leadership language across the board, being unified and consistent with everyone in the organization, I think really helps and adds to better teaming relationships across the board.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. I see a question from Courtney in chat, Amy and Petra, and the question is, were you met with any resistance among members or leadership on the teams you worked with, and how did you navigate? And a secondary question, were the sessions mandatory or voluntary?
All right, sure. I keep the order going if that's helpful. And there's the idea of resistance among members or leadership. For any change to happen, there has to be some level of readiness. If that's not already occurring at the team level, the leadership sets the tone and sets the environment that makes this, we want to do this for increasing team effectiveness, or we care about you and we want this to work better so that you're enjoying coming. So we work with the leaders on how to frame genuinely, authentically. And sometimes that's part of that orientation change. And so typically at that point, once we've gone through that initial framing stage, then it's something that people look forward to. And so even in the first session, there might be some neutrality of, okay, I'm going to wait and see if I like this or if I want to do any more of this. So usually after that experience, there's really a lot of buy-in from the participants. The question around mandatory and voluntary compliance, making something mandatory results in compliance. Making something opt-in results in commitment, is my simplest way of putting it. So there's a both and of saying, yeah, this is for your benefit. So it's really important that you're here. So it's a way of framing. That's mine. Amy, how about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'll just add a little bit, and that is when I work with leaders, it's about them being courageous, right? Being courageous to be vulnerable, because to your point, Petra, they set the stage, they set the tone, they show the uncomfortableness, and we talk about that, right? And often I work with leaders one-on-one first, and then within the larger setting as well. But, they have to take the lead. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. And in terms of mandatory, we don't really work with those words. We create the space for safety, and there's got to be a commitment to building that safe space, because we all have that common goal, and it's getting everyone along that way. And it takes work, commitment, trust, and courage.
Peter.
Just to weigh in, I totally agree with both panelists. Of just an experience I had with one team that they were kind of clammed up. Wasn't a lot going on until the leader was willing to show some vulnerability. And he demonstrated that vulnerability, and all of a sudden the door opened, and people then were much more willing to share or take risks and share some of the things they had on their minds. The other thing is that it takes time to build trust among the team when you're a coach, because they haven't seen you before, and sometimes it takes a couple meetings, and they see that there's this level of consistency, safety, you're honoring confidentiality standards on the team, and that also you earn that trust over time.
And Courtney, I would add that at Corentus, we spend quite a bit of time up front before we engage with the team in what we call making moves with the team and intervening by doing interviews. So we'll do one-on-one interviews, either in person or through Zoom, get to know them, share a bit about us, build that rapport. After the interviews, we like to be invited to observe a few sessions, introduce ourselves, and just observe so they get comfortable with us being in the room. There's this notion of getting comfortable with an observer, with somebody who's accompanying you. And then our first moves, when we intervene, we keep it light. We'll focus on strengths. We'll make a couple moves that are typically geared towards building awareness in self-observation, bringing in some simple tools. So there's a ramp up before we go into really starting to work with the team on deeper issues. Thank you, Courtney. You said, I appreciate that. We also are very careful with how we frame things at our organization to encourage. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Anybody else? Comments, insights, questions that you might have? From today?
I just want to add one more thing, Alex, towards
Please.
the comment on mandatory. And that is that we meet people where they're at and we start there. We don't come in with a whole program and push. We meet them where they're at. And we take that for everything, all the value in that current space that they are. And that's where we start the work. So I
Yeah.
hope it sort of articulates it even more.
Well said.
I will add one nugget to build on what Amy just said as well, which that's a key distinction between a training and coaching modalities, that it's very customized and personalized to what is true for the team. And as Alexander said, that trying not to do things outside of the work. How do we make it experiential and practical inside of the real work, the real team meetings, the real work that they are doing, rather than saying, okay, put everything on hold. Now we're going to go over here and learn some abstract concept and leave it to them to figure out how to integrate. That's not effective. And so just want to make that really clear. Oh, one more question.
Courtney adds, can you add a final comment on how you approached recommendations to the group? Or is it mostly guided self-realization? What a great question. Petra or Amy, you wanna tackle that one? We have about 4 minutes left.
I feel like you might be a great one to start with that, Alexander.
Yeah, so I love the question because there's a certain portion of team coaching which is self-realization. Through the feeding back of data and insights and through inquiry, like what are you noticing right now? What patterns are occurring right now? What is occurring to you as you try to make this decision? They're building the muscle of self-observation, which creates self-awareness, which creates the ability to self-regulate. Every once in a while, though, it is important for us to make recommendations and put on that consulting hat and say, my experience would say other teams I've seen have done, and to introduce a practice, a tool, or way of working, or a method that might be helpful for them. And even to then put a facilitator hat on and say, perhaps I could help you work through this today or facilitate it for you one go and see what you do with it after. So we put on these different hats that are fit for purpose in the moment and that allow us to really flex and pivot in the moment to provide for the team what they need. We can't just stay in the inquiry data feedback position because the team may not know what to do with it. And they may find themselves at a loss, in which case we're not going to go anywhere with that. And it'll create frustration and even perhaps a bit of cynicism and skepticism about the process. Does that make sense to folks? Yeah, great. Thank you, Courtney.
Just a comment, Alexander, that for those of you who are leading teams, or on teams for that matter, if you're curious about coaching, I must say I was not, when I was back in a position of making the decision, I was not all hepped up about trying coaching until somebody that I knew and trusted suggested it. And once I did, it made a world of difference to me and to others around me. So I just encourage you, if you're curious, do some research on it, and think about how it might help you on your teams. And there may be some issues that come out that it would help solve, or there may be some ways your team could be more effective. And there's always ways, but coaching is one of those mechanisms that you can use, one of those tools you can use for that purpose.
Excellent. Okay, I think we're out of the Q&A, Peter.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We've enjoyed these presentations today and hope you have as well. We're grateful to have had the opportunity to be here with each of you. And please know that each of the panelists is ready and willing to help you answer any questions you have at any time. You've got our contact information. And thank you, Mark, for making this possible for us. Appreciate it very much.